In 2000, the Education for All movement strived to radically transform the world by creating 6 goals supported by agencies such as UNESCO, the World Bank and UNICEF. There was a belief that these goals would enable countries to provide quality, basic education for all children, youths and adults by 2015. As 2015 drew closer, the Millennium Development Goals were the dominant agenda which negatively affected the Education for All goals. All efforts focused on ensuring that every child was in school, meaning that there was little attention to the other crucial areas that the 6 Education for All goals focused on. The standardised Millennium Development Goals appeared to make comparisons between countries easier, which led to countries becoming more competitive, innovative and resilient with regards to education. As a result of this, the Education for All goals that did not appear to foster globalisation as competition were not achieved by 2015.
We aim to take an innovative approach when critically analysing the Education for All approach in Australia. Critical analysis will identify the conflicts and controversies of this global approach. Our approach to this presentation can be viewed as innovative because we have centred our research around a developed country which donates to the Education for All scheme, rather than a developing country which financially benefits from it. This graph shows that the overall performance in Australia is above the OECD average. Despite the high attainment, girls and boys differ, and this is evident by the ongoing neutral trend. This links to the performance gap, which we will address.
It has been noticed that gender disparities in Australia have been an issue since 1999. However, now that the gender gap among students has widened to almost 20%, up from 16.2% a decade ago, we suggest that this issue needs to be addressed quickly to prevent the gap widening further.
Research suggests that gender parity becomes a bigger issue in secondary education. There needs to be a focus on both primary and secondary gender gaps in attainment. The graph shows that.
In 1999, Australia were above the regional average for the gender parity in primary education. In the following decade, they set out to gradually close the gender parity gap. In 2012, they remained above the regional average, but the gap slightly increased according to UNESCO.
Similarly, UNESCO 2015A reports that in secondary education, in 1999, Australia were above the regional average, but due to the regional average increasing over the duration of 1999 to 2012, Australia's gender parity in secondary education has declined.
Also, as a result of the gender gap in schools, females are perhaps more likely to have more opportunities as a result of having a better education, which has resulted in qualifications.
There is an achievement gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students in all states of Australia. However, Ford in 2013 reports that there is a staggering 50% points or more difference in reading, writing and numeracy across all years that are currently being tested in the Northern Territory.
Jorgensen and Devlin suggest that the poor results are a consequence of culturally inappropriate tests that are not in Indigenous languages.
In June 2011, the Department of Education, Employment and Workplace Relations released an action plan that sets out a common approach for all states to work on closing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students.
This action is needed to help and support the Indigenous minority in education because the progress so far is minuscule.
Our belief is that if you aim to close the gap at primary, it will help to close the gap at secondary.
Thompson indicated that the most prominent gender issues in Australian education are encouraging boys to read and getting girls interested in mathematics. These issues are regularly highlighted and discussed, yet there appears to be little evidence of government-led programmes and initiatives to deal with them. However, to encourage adolescent girls to gain an interest in maths, the University of New South Wales, Australia, runs an annual series of free workshops to assist with their future studies and career.
In our opinion, Australia needs to generate and finance a national programme that will encourage boys to read. The programme should incorporate some relatively new yet successful strategies that that have been used in other countries with similar issues. Sanderson in 2013 suggests that strategies such as finding books that intrigue boys, reading with young boys, setting specific times for reading and encouraging the significant male in boys' lives to read with them have been particularly successful in the UK.
Shields also suggests that achieving gender parity on a global scale remains an elusive target. However, other countries have managed to achieve gender parity, demonstrating that it can be accomplished.
Currently, there are low expectations for Indigenous students, and there is a wish to abolish this so that Indigenous people can believe in themselves and succeed.
This links to Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which argues for an inclusive and fair education system that promotes lifelong learning. Alexander in 2012 henceforth suggested there is a need for an education system that is embedded in a national culture. Alexander also advocated that culture is mediated, transmitted and sustained via education.
Closing the gap is admirable in principle, but the practical realities are much more difficult. The complex array of factors needs to be addressed, as a one-size-fits-all approach isn't effective.